Climate conversations, we've had them for years, and we've asked ourselves certain questions about what should actually be happening to protect the climate for future generations. That's the conversation that we get into this hour. And our two guests are in the studio this morning. They've been here before. Dr. Philip Aming'o is the project manager, WISER Kenya project. It's the IGAD Climate Protection and Application Center, ICPAC. And he's here with us this morning. Good morning, Dr. Aming'o.
Morning.
How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Karibu Sana, joined by Zachary Misiani, who is also with the WISER project as a project coordinator and at the International Center for Humanitarian Affairs at the Kenya Red Cross Society. Good morning, Zachary.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Karibu Sana, thank you for being here today. We're going to welcome you with today's proverb. I tell you today that I couldn't figure this one out. But I started saying my own things, so they refused me to interpret.
Yeah.
So we leave it to you, gentlemen. Dennis.
So we are in Zambia, a country of about 20 million people, and has over 70 ethnic groups, with Bemba, Tonga, Lozi, Chewa, and Nsenga being the largest. Gained independence from the Brits in 1964, that is 24th of October. But let's go to the proverb today. What you wear is known by the arm. What you wear is known by the arm. Zachary, how would you interpret that?
What you wear is owned by your arm. For example, if you are what you usually speak needs to reflect what you usually do in a simplest language. Yeah, thank you, Dennis.
Yeah, Zachary, how would you interpret that?
The way you put on tells a lot whom you are.
Who you are.
Yes.
See?
Yeah,
Not that difficult, no?
I guess this is the cold that fried my brain. I guess.
Now the coffee.
Now the coffee. You're not going to let it go. But we know what you're doing. Okay, so, I mean, as we get into this conversation this hour, necessary for us to talk about climate. Climate talks still continue. Usually we wait for, a time when, the world is talking about climate, and then we have those conversations. But we can see the effects around us, no matter what we do. For goodness sake, it's raining in August. In Kenya, I guess it's not a normal time for that to be happening. But let's go into it this morning. When we talk about the WISER Climate Project Kenya, we'll start with you, Dr. Aming'o. Tell us a little bit about this project. What is it? What is it doing? What are we looking at?
Thank you. WISER is an acronym that Weather Climate Information Services. This is an innovative way of rallying the call or doing what the UN Secretary General said, that by 2027, everybody, no matter where you are coming from, where you are staying, should be able to receive early warning information that is climate related. We know that we have climate-related hazards, floods, drought, heat wave, name it. So the idea here is that WISER is to package climate information services in a simple, in a better way, in a produced way that anybody else can be able to consume. So that is the essence about a WISER project. And just to dig deep a little bit about it, is as a result of funding by the UK government through the FCDO, the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, to support Kenya, because we know very well that Kenya is highly affected. When it is very dry, we suffer because of drought. When it is rainy, we also suffer floods. So WISER is an innovative way that we can reach communities, stakeholders with the weather and climate information. And we are focusing particularly in two counties in Kenya, Garissa and Tana River.
Okay.
Simply because the two counties are at the extreme end. When it is dry, they are extremely dry. When it is rainy, they are really affected by flood.
And how exactly are you reaching communities? When we say reaching communities, what exactly is being done?
There are so many ways through which you can reach the community. First of all, there is the production of the information done by technocrats. We have the Kenya Met Department, a national entity that is in charge of early warning. Then after they have come up with the weather information that they have taken time to prepare and get ready for communities, now we have through channels like radio. Today we have several FM stations, community-based, that people listen to. we have television network. Those who can read, we have a newspaper. Those who are indoor to have smartphone can also follow through their social media. So we have several channels through which we disseminate this information to community. But the most important thing is reaching them physically through some of the people that are able to reach the community. So there's a structure through which some of the communities can be reached.
What are we telling them, Zachary? What are we telling these communities? You mentioned these two, Garissa and Tana River, and you said, well, Doc has said when extreme weather hits, they are affected extremely, whether it's dry, whether it's wet. But what are we telling them beyond it's raining or it's dry? What are we saying that is actually going to have impact?
Yeah, thanks Indo for that question. Remember, traditionally we have been responding to disasters, for example, drought and the floods. But nowadays we are trying to move away from that traditional way of doing things, and we take the advantage of what we call the impact-based forecast. So the communities needs to know, for example, if it's raining heavily from the upper catchment of, for example, in the Mount Kenya regions, then we are anticipating that because of this heavy rainfall is likely to cause some flash floods and also might break the river banks. Then the communities needs to know when is this likely to happen. If they know, then there are some actions which they need to make. For example, they need to avoid flooded areas, move from the flood-blown areas, move your livelihood, move your livestock from those danger zones. The same case, for example, if drought is coming and this is a slow onset, and from the scientific information, either from ICPAC or the Kenya Met Department, then we are anticipating that the drought is coming in 2 to 3 months' time. So if you are a pastoralist having like 1,000 sheep and goats, can you make some decision, early actions? For example, you can either reduce the number of the livestock because we are likely to have like diminished pasture, the lack of enough water for the livestock. So can you make actions before that drought strikes? So that is what we want the communities to take the use of climate information for decision making for the benefit of their lives, and also to protect even the lives and the livestock of their livelihood.
Zachary, I have a question. If we go back to last year, the worst incident that we witnessed last year for flooding, this was Mahiu.
Yeah.
This was towards the end of April, I think. I recall the night before the flooding, conversations around people are being told this rain is going to be too much, people need to move, and so on and so forth. But then people didn't. Many people didn't. Then whatever happened, and it was such a disaster. Then later the government came in, and we remember during the burials, there was a promise to move these people to safer grounds and whatnot. But to just back up a bit, when you give warning signs and tell people, for example, this is going to happen, this is what you need to know, you need to move. The question I've always struggled with, and this is what people ask, is move to where? Who is going to give us that land? How do we settle down? How do you move from your house? You've lived in that house for whatever number of years. Your children are there. They go to school around that same area. And then you're telling them all of a sudden, because it's going to flood, move. From a humanitarian standpoint, it will make sense to prepare them that this is coming, but then move. But are there gaps where you're giving the warning signs, the people are willing to move, but then move where? How does that coordination work?
Yeah, thanks, Dennis Okali. That's kind of course, I can say, for example, when we are doing the location of the communities, this is a multi-agency activities whereby we have to involve different government institutions to identify. Already we have to do identification of the places, for example. Unfortunately, sometimes we use the schools as one of the facilities because they have the physical infrastructure. Again, of course, it will affect the learning of the learners. So once we identified a place with other multi-agency, we are trying to move the communities from the flood-blown areas. Of course, we understand that the vulnerability of this community, they cannot move without the support in terms of the financial support, even just the fiscal movement. Again, the issues of the land, for example, you can try to move like one sub-clan from point A to point B. Sometimes we have that somehow the resistance between the inter-clan conflicts, that you guys who are from the other side, you are not supposed to be relocated on the other side. But what we are encouraging is that once the early warning information has been issued to the communities, of course we can facilitate their movement if possible. If they are not capable, of course we understand our poverty level with our communities, and the community or the neighboring communities should accept that these people have been displaced or are going to be displaced because a disaster is. It's better we save lives, then we can, if there is the issue of the land issues, then we can solve later. As compared, you just wait until a disaster strikes, is then you are moving people from place A to place B. For example, in Tana River, downstream, these are the flood-blown areas. Then we usually encourage people move from the Dana Delta, go to the higher grounds. And already we usually do the risk mapping. We identify some places whereby these communities need to be temporarily relocated. Once the disasters ended, then the community needs to go back and continue with their daily economic activities.
Dr. So when we talk about the early warning systems and anticipatory actions that do take place, there is the aspect of co-production. And co-production, because for a very long time you find climate information has always been shared by the scientists. So we've scientists gather the information and disseminate it. But here we talk about involving all the stakeholders, including the local communities, to be able to consume this. Because I remember when I visited Tana River and Garissa, there is an aspect of even the symbols that are being used for the local communities to understand this information. So how critical is that, and how has that changed the game for the locals to understand the intensity of the disasters that would be coming, and for them to act early?
That's quite a pertinent question. Co-production is the way to go today. I want to give an example. If you are to make a phone, and you go to the consumer and tell them, what kind of phone do you want? What are the features that you want for the phone? And then you tell him, I want one with maybe WhatsApp. I want a phone with Facebook and thing. And then the designer does that for you. You really own that phone. You take it as you want. You have a say on it. It's the same way for co-production. What we do, before scientists would just sit in a laboratory, produce weather forecast, and then you could see manyunyo hapa na pale. We no longer talk of manyunyo hapa na pale. What we do today, we get to the community, we get to stakeholders. If you're an agriculture officer or you're an agriculture extension officer, we sit together and ask you, how would you want me to present this information to you? What is the best way you want it? And what is it that you need? A farmer will tell you, I need to know when the rainfall will start. I need to know when to plant. So give me when the rainfall will start. So that is exactly what scientists will try to struggle to come up with. Once you've given them what they want, there is that owning. They own it. So by owning it, they are able to follow, they are able to use it, and it's working for them. So the co-production is the current initiative that we are trying to advocate, rather than manufacturing a document and then you put it into the market for people to consume. Yes.
Zachary, you find now, after the co-production and all this information has gotten to the local communities, there is now the aspect of, because if you speak to the farmers in these communities, one would say, I've actually changed from growing maize, now I am having green grams because it is long-lasting and withstands drought. I'm able to know where to move my animals. I'm growing fodder for my animals for when drought is coming. So when you look at anticipatory action and how that has changed the game in terms of the losses, the deaths and destruction that has been before, what are we looking at right now with all this information getting to the communities?
So the central part of the conversation is that, remember, the communities who is at the vulnerable is the center. So are we producing what these people needs? For example, through the anticipatory action, we have a window of opportunity. For example, if you are a farmer practicing small-scale farming along the River Tana Basin, and it is predicted that coming season we are likely to have heavy rainfall, and from the statistics we have been witnessing that heavy rainfall is the one most of the time usually cause some havoc. If you are a farmer, you need to prepare in mind that this heavy rainfall, if I plant some crops or seeds, are likely to be affected in terms of like the flooding. And if it is again predicted, for example, the drought is coming, and you go ahead, you are a small-scale farmer, and plant, and there is no enough rainfall. Of course, at the end of the day, you will count the losses because your crops will not mature into a stage you can be able to harvest. So the communities need to make a wise decision based on the early warning information. If we are saying that some part of Tana River, especially the lower, will experience some good rainfall, so we anticipate that the pasture, the fodder will be available for the livestock. So already we know that we are likely to have some movement. You remember Tana River and the Garissa, mostly the large population is pastoralists. These are the community who usually move from one part to another. So we are likely to see the movement from the northern into the southern because of that availability of the pasture. And if you are a pastoralist, you can even make early action, even to store some fodder for during the use of the dry period. Once the rains have been received and there is enough fodder for your livestock, then you can harvest the extra, just to keep it, and you can use during the dry period.
How are we using information towards decision making, Dr. Aming'o? When we talk about the fact that, I mean, for example, just a few days ago, Dennis and I were talking yesterday, and we said, look, it's raining, and he said, you know, yeah, well, the weatherman said that it was going to rain. He said there was going to be some extended rainfall, and I was like, none the wiser. I was like, okay, well, it's true. So the information that we have is scientific, it's formulaic to a T. You can predict and you will know. But how are we using the information to then affect decisions? One would imagine that because the information is shared, it is so, or it's even created, it is so that we can use it. Can we say that used information will then be able to eliminate or at least decrease the severity of disaster if it's used properly?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. The purpose of giving early information is for it to be used to minimize some of the impacts that would have been caused if at all you did not use the information.
But do we see that happening? Let's talk about the country today. Let's take from the country and let's extrapolate to the region, to the world. Because if we did, then perhaps we would be able to minimize the destruction. The example that we give about the floods that happened last year, it was terrible. There are people today who have not recovered. There are schools that were inundated by these floods that have never re-established in this country, right? And that information had been given before. So, WISE project, other projects that are into the climate space, do we see that the information is actually we know the information is there somewhere, but is it actually being applied to situations? And if so, where?
That's really interesting. You know, that's why I started by saying that we are rallying the call by the UN Secretary General. It has been noted that there is early warning information, but doesn't trickle down to the intended end users. So that's why there is a deliberate effort from global level all the way up to the village level that there has to be aware that climate information must reach the end users. So we have several approaches that are in place. We have what we call Global Framework for Climate Services, which we now have regional climate framework for climate services, national, and now we are taking it to county. The framework is supposed to give a proper way in which this climate information from the manufacturer, through the intermediaries, from the brokers, to the end users must work and must get to the intended user.
Doc, you're talking about a framework that essentially trickles down this information from up here to down here, because usually you find that the end users suffer in severity and suffer in, in numbers. What exactly does this framework look like? How are you able to open that up?
So the framework basically supports, it strengthens and coordinates the development, delivery, and use of climate services to assist decision making. Very, very important that from the production stage to the middlemen that deliver the information to the end users, there has to be a structure. And one of the most important thing is capacity building, knowledge. Knowledge is power. Even the communities you're talking about move to higher ground. They have to be prepared. They have to know the magnitude of the impact. So the service, being at global, regional, national, and even now county, is just a way in which this can be done in a structured way. There must be monitoring and evaluation to see that the information given, did it get to the intended user? How was it used? What were the impacts? And in terms of quantifying how this is done. And this way, we are optimistic that the issue of impact when this disaster occurs would be drastically reduced.
Dr. Philip, a lot of times these conversations, climate change conversations, can sound a bit elitist or too scientific for the what you'd call, quote unquote, common mwananchi. I want you to maybe give us an idea, take us through the communication. So you have a system, you're monitoring, and like you said, it has to be structured. So how, from monitoring, and give a typical example, to how that information is relayed to the communication as part of the early warning signs that this is about to happen, and then what then do you advise? How does it work in a typical scenario?
Yes, this is how it works basically. We have monitoring system. If you visit any of the Met services, come to our center, the IGAD Climate Prediction Center, we have a situation room like we have here now. We are monitoring system in real time. We are able to see like the cold weather we have today. We know the genesis, how it started, what is causing it is very unusual.
So what exactly are you seeing about?
We're using satellite information.
So you're using satellite
monitoring the global oceans.
So we normally see those monitors, and we see things green like clouds moving green. We see like a radar. It's for you. It's like, for me, it's like child's play. But for a lot of us, is you see all these different monitors showing different things. There's green moving. There's blue at some point.
Yes.
How do you monitor that? You get the satellite images. So how do you? It's wind speed, wind direction.
It's quite a lot, and the experts are in charge of monitoring. And after monitoring, and monitoring is not done a day or two. This is what we have monitored for more than even 60 years. We have data. So we know behaviors. If it behaves in a certain way, we are able to tell this is going to happen. So monitoring continues every day, but the work of the technocrat is to monitor, to give that information, and they have also middlemen, communication team, people who can translate this scientific jargon into a language that agriculture expert will be able to understand, disaster person will understand, the community will understand. So it's not just an expert. We have a team of communicators, because scientists are known not to communicate well in a way that my grandmother can understand in the village. So we rely on middlemen. We rely on people that can use this information in a basic way that can be done. So what I'm saying, Dennis, is that from the monitoring stage, we spend like now there are scientists from all over the region sitting in our place, using the past information and what we see currently to predict the October, November, December rains. So after looking through, seeing what's happening, they sit with the sectors. We have agriculture, we have livestock, we have fishermen, all those kind of team. They sit with them and say, this is what we are foreseeing. How is it going to affect you? then they come up with the possibility of if it is a lot of rain, this is how they are going to be affected. Then this one is further refined by some communicators that now we deliver that, we give that information to take to the community level. So everybody that consumes this information is taken care of.
What I've seen, I've been a part of a WhatsApp group where I was consuming that information.
Sure.
The challenge that I had was, apart from screenshots of, those monitors of how you see things moving in a circle and what, I can't interpret that. But then there is, okay, so Nairobi is going to experience, this particular area is going to experience rainfall. This happened a lot last year, I think. Is it 2 millimeter rainfall? So you'll get that information, but I can't interpret what does 2 millimeter rainfall in a certain area in Nairobi then mean. So you've talked about farmers, you've talked about fishermen. Beyond those two groups or 3 or 4 other groups that are of interest, now to the other local people, like the case of Maimahiu, over 50 people died. And these were people who are charcoal sellers doing their random business. How does that information then get to that person to interpret that when we're talking about 2 millimeter or 5 millimeter or 10 millimeter, this is essentially what it actually means? How do you break it down?
Well, that's something that is ongoing. I said in my earlier response that there is need for capacity building. We need to educate people. We need to make them aware of some of the impacts of those kinds. Because sometimes you can tell somebody that floods are coming. Then they tell, I was born here, my grandfathers were buried here.
And we've never been washed away by water.
So we have to sit and understand, tell them what exactly the impact is. So capacity building is key in all this. If you don't capacitate people, you don't tell them some of these things. And that's why I talked about co-production. When you produce together, you even tell him, of course, your grandfather was buried there, but it will sweep your house. So please just move. Then when it goes down, you come back. That understanding, building that understanding, if it is done well and the end user get convinced, it is just a change of mindset. Once somebody is able to understand, get convinced, then this thing will be a thing of the past.
So, Zachary, you find now, once this information has been had by the scientists, there's co-production that has happened, there is capacity building that has happened. But then again, there's always been these group of individuals in the communities that are vulnerable. We talk about women, children, the disabled, where at any given, because if you go to Garissa and Tana River, they will tell you, afadhali ni hamishe ng'ombe yangu, mtoto na bibi tutakuja baadaye. I'll come for my wife and children later, because the livestock is important to them. But it's a question where even the most vulnerable, who are usually left behind, become part and parcel of this information production and consumption of this. Just how critical is it for everyone to be included in this and that no one is left behind?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dennis. And it's unfortunate, of course, we remember what happened in Mayumayu. Of course, we lost the lives of the Kenyans. And before I answer your question, I remember there were early warning information from Met talking about it, that heavy rainfall will continue. And when we reach a situation whereby we start experiencing like landslide, mudslide, that is when we have a threshold. For example, if it has been raining for like 5 consecutive days with a huge amount of the rainfall, like more than 22 millimeters within 24. So we reach a situation whereby if that threshold has been reached, then some things will start automatically happening, like landslide, mudslide. You see, and through the WISER, we are co-developing the threshold. A threshold is just a certain indicator. If that indicator has been reached, then we anticipate something is going to happen. Assuming, for example, the water levels in Masinga Dam. If the prediction is saying that we are expected to continue heavy rainfall for this month, and the water levels is rising, if it reaches a certain level, that is the maximum, a threshold, we anticipate it will start overspilling. Once there is a lot of water downstream, again, we monitor through the WISER with other partners like Water Resource Authority, the water levels in some rivers. If it reaches a certain level, automatically we know that something's going to happen. And unfortunately, the vulnerable communities are going to be affected, even though they are not the one who is contributing most of what is happening, but we don't want to leave anybody behind. So when we take early actions, we have to consider the most vulnerable communities, people living with disability, the expectant women, the children under 5 years, the elderly, the sick people. For example, those people, based on their physical challenges, they cannot make a quick decision. For example, if floods is coming, they cannot just run away as compared to somebody who is having a good health. So those are some of the people we just give the first priority. We have to save lives. Of course, we know those communities, they have a lot of touch with their livestock. They love their livestock so much. It's better they stay with their camels, goats. You see, because of the tradition, or they have been in that way for long years, and they have a long in touch between the life. It's like the same, for example, if you buy a Mercedes-Benz, especially, you love your car so much, as compared if, unfortunately, your kid scratch that car, you can just slap, then later you say, oh, sorry, because you love, in quotes, you love your car somehow more than even you are. So, of course, we are trying to educate the community that life is most important. Of course, the livestock, you can lose the livestock, but if you are going to be given another resources, you can just bounce back where were you. But as compared to the loss of the lives of the people. Yeah.
Just to add to what my colleague has said, this project is like a case study, that we want to work out well in Tana Basin so that it's upscaled to the whole country and the region. You mentioned about people who are not able to, the PWDs, the people with living disability. These are the most neglected group, elderly women, the sick, and all that. So the idea of this project is to bring them at the forefront. We are supporting them so that we make sure that even the county governments are pertinent to the issue that they are the most vulnerable. When floods come, somebody on a wheelchair may not run easily. So this project is laying a lot of emphasis on the gender, the inequality and social inclusion, so that we bring on board and we support the most vulnerable people. So we have brought this to networks of the PWDs, and we are now working closely with them to make sure that they're the first they get the information when it is provided, and if there is a way to support them, they can be supported to get out of the way of the disaster.
So we know there's certain areas that are prone to certain things, and this is not just in Kenya, it's around the world. When we look at the climate, if you want to look at fires that take place in the Western Hemisphere every summer, when the temperatures get really hot, it's dry tinder essentially. We know that floods take place in western parts of the nation and also in eastern parts of the nation, Kenya, for example. It's almost as with almost precise, you're able to predict. With almost precise predictability, that this will happen. And there will be an amount of destruction. And that people will have to move. We know this. It's going to happen every year almost. So since that predictability is it is there, are there other more permanent solutions that can be found or brought about? For example, if people were to move, and I know you talked about the fact that people love their animals and that they're nomadic in nature, but are there certain places where you say, well, for whatever reason, don't live here, and let us use these areas as water receptors, for example, whether you're going to look at damming the water, whether you're going to look at permanent sites for water storage. Do conversations like that happen? So where we say, we know that the water, there will be a deluge here. Make them storage points. Don't let people live here. can there be some kind of permanency in action resulting from the predictability of a situation?
Yes, it is. Let me give you an example. Why is it that we only hear of deaths in less developed countries like in Africa, but in the US, in Europe, we have this disaster, even worse than here.
Yeah.
But we don't hear millions of people dying like it's here. One thing is that there has to be the goodwill of the government, empowerment. Look at Nzoia River. We used to have a similar situation. Currently, you don't hear much, in fact, almost nil, because the World Bank supported the government to look at the situation along the Nzoia River, the people living closer, and the way water gets out of the runway to the communities. They built gabions, they did capacity building, they put a lot of observatories along the weather. There is monitoring, and there is provision of this information in a manner that communities respond positively. And after several capacity buildings that have been done, it is possible. But first of all, if you say that people are not going to be flooded, for example, in Tana River, we know that the livelihood there is pastoralism. They move with their animals in search of browse and pasture. So if you are able to capacitate them, give them finances or educate them in a way that they stop moving the animals, but keep few animals that are productive, that are able to give them the same value as what they are having 100 of cats to give them, then they will be able not to move and they will not to go to flood-prone areas. Remember, we talk about disaster when there is an encounter of maybe a property or lives with the hazard. But if people keep out of the hazard, then we don't talk about disaster. So put these people in a way that they are able to be with their animals, zero grace. They get fodder, they give their animals, and they get the same value as what they get out of their
Which is why I'm asking if there
sure.
can't be some kind of permanency here. Because Zachary, Zachary,
Sure.
that you know where Red Cross will go tomorrow if there's a disaster in Tana River, for example.
Course.
You know the areas. I'm sure you close your eyes, wake up in the middle of the night, and you know, yes, place 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there will definitely be calamity there.
Sure.
Because there's a deluge of water. I'm saying, why is that place not dammed? Not dammed
Sure.
to hell, but dammed like water. Why is there no permanent site where there's water in the area where people should not be living? Because this has happened year after year. Let's go back 10 years. It was a situation. 10 years before that, it was a situation. But then we hear in 2025, and then we continue to say things like,
Sure.
let's capacity build. I think capacity building, as much as it's a nice word to say, we've done enough of it. We can now actually do and implement certain things.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ndo, for that question, for a persistent question. Remember, under the WISER project, Daktari, when we started the inception meeting, we engaged the county government. These are the policy decision makers, and it was a participatory. We wanted to hear the views from the ground. We asked them, this has been happening. What do you want the WISER to do differently? Of course, the same question which you are asking, it was asked by the communities that every now and again, when it's raining, we expect floods. Can we have like a permanent solution to address that? Kengen is part of now we are working with the other government institutions. Of course, they have even started extending the carrying capacity of the waters in their dams, so that at least that extra volume, it can accommodate excess water. For example, if you go to the Tana, between Tana and the Garissa, to preach, if you are very keen, they are constructing a new bridge, which we anticipate is going to be affected. Traditionally, the previous bridge was built like 5 decades ago, and when it usually rains, the water passes. So already, those are some of the permanent solutions. We are likely to see that even if it's going to rain coming this season, the new bridge will continue supporting people to continue passing from Garissa to Tana and Tana to Garissa. And of course, under the WISER Phase 2, we are going to work with the policy at the county to see where the gaps are, especially even like budgeting. Do we have enough resources for the counties to make a decision? For example, if you are saying that 100 meters from the rivers, the community are not supposed to stay there, do we have a law which is talking about that? If there is no law, somebody can take you to court and say,
why did you put it here?
Yeah. So we are going to counter check if we have some gaps in terms of the disaster risk management policy, and if we are going to say like within this buffer zone, then let community not build physical infrastructure, but you can just practice like farming, as compared if you put a physical infrastructure within a flood-prone areas, automatically will be affected. So those are the things which we are going to look in terms of the policy. We support the county government to review the policy for the benefit of the community, to have like a permanent issues.
You know, I remember there was a story in 1984 where former late President Daniel Moi he held a meeting with his cabinet under a tree. I think it was somewhere in Machakos. He had a cabinet meeting under a tree. And he told them, look guys, there is a flooding problem, soil erosion problem that you're having. We have to fix this. And for the next 3 hours, he made everybody build gabions. Okay? And I remember growing up, and you're in primary school when Moi was the president. There were a lot of conversation from the top about building gabions. You go to Google, you actually see pictures of the president holding huge blocks of stones, building gabions in different parts of this country. And we had even songs in primary school about the environment. We were not talking about climate change then. That was not the code word. But there was an emphasis, a very strong emphasis on the environment. And we all grew up knowing you don't just cut trees. We were planting trees by then. There's an age which vividly remembers that time. Then slowly things started changing. We were not paying too much attention to the environment. And around this conversation, because Zachary talking about policy, we have a day in this country where we're told, guys, plant a tree somewhere.
October 10th.
Yeah?
October 10th.
October 10th.
Yes.
We are told, guys, go plant trees. And it's picking up. We're going back to that sense of look around you. It's important to plant trees. Do you feel, Dr. Philip, when we talk about bottlenecks, because Zachary talked earlier about you go to certain areas, you're telling people then to move. You've got all the signs that this is going to happen. A disaster is about to happen here. But then there's clanism. This clan will say, we can't move close to those people because atuskizani na wale watu. And what are other bottlenecks do you see, even as you're using these as case studies in Tana and Garissa?
Before I come to the bottlenecks, Mr. Kari, the issue of climate, environment, and whatever is an all-inclusive stakeholder kind of approach that needs to be done. It's not a one-man, it's not a government, it's a community, it's not a met, but it should involve all cadre of people, because it affects you, it affects me in one way or the other. But the most important thing we have learned is that there has to be a goodwill from the top. And you've just mentioned what the late president was doing. When he went out and showed people how to build the gabions, it becomes part and parcel. The MPs, the political leaders do the same. So most of these things need a political goodwill. Once that goodwill is there, then any other issue can be sorted out.
It can be sorted out.
If you do it at the ground level with just mere communities, the issues are like policies will come in. They will be a bottleneck. So as my colleague was saying, there has to be a policy that all these activities that we do are anchored on. And that is where even the framework that we are talking about is like a policy. Once it is in place, somebody will not take you to court because my animals were killed because of floods or drought and all that kind of thing. So policies are very important, because once they're in place, then you just refer to them and then you make a decision. And even the policy makers, the politicians will use the policy to guide the communities. So one of the things that we have noted is that the policy is not really strong enough to govern all this. That's why, as WISER Kenya, we are talking with the county government of both Tana River and Garissa to review the policies. We have the county integrated development plans that they already have in place. All of them have got climate change policies. The phase 2 that my colleague talked about, we are going to sit with them, review, and make sure that these good policies that they have are reviewed, and they have to integrate climate information into these policies. Once it is integrated, then we believe that issues of climate will be amplified and everybody will be supported.
It's a wait and see, but it's also a connect at all times to make sure that actually these things do happen. Dr. Philip O. Aming'o is the project manager of WISER Kenya Project, the IGAD Climate Prediction and Application Center, IGPAC. Zachary Misiani is the WISER Kenya Project Coordinator, the International Center for Humanitarian Affairs at the Kenya Red Cross Society. Thank you both for being here this morning, and the conversations must continue.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.